Okay, in this intermediate tutorial, I'm going to take a look at this crane model. So very soon now, I'm going to take all these models that I've been building over the last couple of months. I'm going to start putting them to life animation-wise inside some of the game engines. But so like most of the cases, though, the way I'll animate it is I'll animate it through code. All right, instead of using keyframes and things like that, for me, it's more efficient and it's much more accurate. But there's still a lot of things you can do if you're not a programmer and you're not into math and physics. You can still fake things pretty good. So first thing is, let's see if we can move this boom. I'm just going to rotate it on the y-axis and see what happens. I'll do RY, and it's like, well, that doesn't seem right. It really should be rotating back here at this pivot point. How about this one here? I'll do RY here. And okay, that's rotating at the right location. Well, that's because the origin of this object is set back here at this pin. So let's do that with here as well. So I'm going to set it here. I'm going to do Shift S. I'm going to move my cursor to the selected. And then I'm going to select this object. And then I'm going to transform. Where I usually transform the origin to the geometry, now I'm going to transform the origin to the 3D cursor. So there it's there. Now when I do RY, then it's pivoting around that point. Alright, so that's how you want to do it in your animation. But then how about I want to do both, so I'll shift select this. I want both of these to rotate to RY. And they rotate both now on their own pivot. Now if you don't see that happening, it's likely because, see down here, I have mine set to individual origins. So I want to rotate around each of the individual origins of those objects. By default, you're going to be up here typically like this. And if you do RY here, you can see it's going to break that hydraulic cylinder away from that pin. So that's not going to work, except if we do it on the individual origins in RY, then we have another issue, and that is this here, that this cylinder's hydraulic piston really should be extending out, or really what's happening is you push the hydraulic piston out with a certain force under hydraulic pressure, and then that's going to lift the boom. So that's why I would take care of this in code. So you can still work at it if you want to try and do something similar within the keyframes, but it's not the recommended way I would do it. In fact, that's why I teach the lessons under my premium tutorials on my website for doing this kind of stuff. That way you get a much better fundamental understanding, and you'll understand why it's important to know the technical side of animation as well. Alright, so let me Control Z that back here. So I won't deal with that right now, but these pivot points are really important. And another thing is this boom arm. Well, I don't have these extensions parented to this piece yet, but let's take a look at this. I think I have a separate copy there. Let me move that out of the way. This piece here, alright, I have just these, I have this hook parented to the pulley right now, but what I wanted to do is I'm going to parent it to, say, a particular point on an object. So let's say I'm just going to parent it to this. I'm going to move it like this. I'm going to ignore the extensions and put it right underneath this piece, like that was the only part of the boom. Just we'll ignore those portions. Well, I'll tell you how we're going to do it. See those portions of the boom like that? That, and that. That's right. I'm ignoring them. All right. So we're going to pretend that it's just this very short boom, and I want this to be attached to that somehow. Well, when you vertex parent something, when you parent something, I'm going to shift select this at the same time, press Control P, and I'm going to parent it to the object. And if you look closely, you see the line, and the line's going all the way back to the origin point of the boom. Well, but I need my origin point back there in order for it to rotate right. So now if I take the boom and I rotate it, then it's parented way back there, and it just follows like that. It's like, well, so that's not going to work because that hook should be dangling in the air. So there's a couple ways to deal with that. Let's get rid of this right now. All right. One way is through rigid bodies, which I typically would use. But in this lesson, just if you're doing simple animations, there's other ways too, and that's what we're dealing with here is vertex parenting. So I might come into this object here and go into edit mode. Let me see if I have something near the center. Oh, well, I'll just grab this edge like this. Maybe this edge right here. I'm just going to subdivide it. Yikes. What is that all about? What is that all about? Alright, well, subdivide. Huh. I don't know what that's all about all of a sudden. I will, we're going to forget that. I'll deal with that later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to parent this to this, but now I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to shift select, and then before I parent, I'm going to press tab, and then I'm going to pick a vertex or any 3 vertices. So I'm going to fake it out like this. I'm going to go into here. Let's just parent it to a single vertex. I'm just going to parent it to that point. I was going to parent it to a point right in between, but for some reason I couldn't subdivide it. That's just throwing me for a second. Alright, so now that I've done that, then I can press Control P and I can parent to that vertex. And what that does now, if I leave here, you can see my line, it's pointed to that specific location. And the beauty of that is now that when I come back here and I grab this object and I rotate it on Y, R, Y, then you can see that that hook there is rotating freely. It's not following the thing all around. It acts more like a real hook, like that, RY. There you go. And it's staying like that. And it's simulating, it's faking gravity. Of course, I'm not going to fake it in the game engine and otherwise. It'll be a real force that'll be taking place in that way, because in this case, how are you going to make that swing? Well, you could. I mean, if you're doing fake animations, you could come up here and then you could grab this object at a certain keyframe, you know, and you could be making this swinging on its own axis at the same time. So it's just different ways to approach it. I would recommend, of course, the math, physics, engineering, programming approach, but for most animators and artists, I know you don't want to deal with that kind of stuff, but there are ways you can get around it, and it works just fine anyway. All right, well, I hope that gives you a few pointers about different ways to work, and okay, that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next lesson.